The released mage is forced to serve the Empire for the rest of their lives. I don't think that's going to work out. Can't you just turn around and fireball the dude that's watching you in the face?
I cast fireball. Dude. I cast fireball. Fireball solves every situation.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily cringe content anywhere on the internet. Promise swearsies. It's just a fact. It's totally science. Go ahead, look it up if you want. We've had a very consistent contributor to the channel posting in my subreddit, and I've never covered one of his stories, but given a cursory glance, it looks pretty good, so I'd like to welcome user Lord DeSanto to the stage. I'm pleased to meet him. He was quite invested in the Unfortunate saga from the looks of things. But hopefully his stories don't lean too tragic. I guess we're going to jump in and see what it is today with one of his tabletop stories. So let's get into it. The GM Beard and the LARP that never was. Damn. I don't know if we're supposed to be sad about that, but I'm kind of sad about that. This is the story of how an argument between two beards destroyed an entire LARP. Oh, see, OP likes the LARPing too. Okay, we're on the same page. This story is real, about real events, by real people. There are no heroes, and no catharsis at the end. But also, no one has to move to Bel Air. Sweet. It'd be hilarious if I read like this hour-long post and it just ended with a Bel Air. The conversations are not word for word. It's been almost 10 years since this point. Yes, I'm cursed to read stories that are almost a decade old. That's fine, whatever. Nothing happens in current year anyways. So we'll get into our cast list. Characters, OP, your humble narrator. That's how I used to introduce myself on my gaming channel. Is that a reference? Or maybe it's a Clockwork Orange reference, since that's what I think I lifted it from initially. Anyways, yes, OP is living his worst beardery phase of his life during this story. 30-year-old man from mainland Europe who sadly hasn't yet realized that he's a beard and thinks that he's a nice guy, not realizing that he is a nice guy. TM. I've gotten better since then, I promise. We're all in different phases of our recovery, man. It's okay. Improve a little bit every day. That's how we win. GM Beard, or just GM, a nerdy man from a small rural town nearby, a few years older, interested in most things nerdy, and not so much of everything else. Does that include hygiene? I don't know if his neck is beardy, since he sports the most fashionable hairdo ever, the mullet. Oh yeah, business in the front, party in the back. I'd like to sing the praises of the mullet, but I've seen too many post-ironic mullets lately, so I can't do it. I'm sorry. Elfin Woman was the mom figure of our RP guild, really into all types of games. Her motto was, I'm in, what are we playing? A consistent player. Not quite as rare as the Eternal GM, but still pretty rare. I support anybody who's down for the cause. There was also Fjord, the ancient of our guild. Person who writes characters like Nicolas Cage decided how to act, but an awesome gamer and person.
Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes!
So, I'd known GM for years at the start of this story. He was a member of the RP guild in my college town. He was a genuinely nice person, and we shared a ton of interests. He'd always been an odd person, but not in a bad way. Yeah, just because he's beardy doesn't mean he's a bad dude. You could be a beard and a decent person. Anyway, GM never had a real job, but rather worked in local youth groups or similar project works, or sold his handicrafts, or collected unemployment benefits. You might think I'm gonna shit talk that, but I'm not. Real jobs suck. I'm not thrilled that he's on benefits, but I don't know. Everyone else is doing it. Live your best life, I guess. One large source for his income was turning Bratz dolls into other characters and selling them. Oh, that's where the idea for Funko Pops came from. I get it now. He should file a lawsuit. He'd totally win.
Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I.
I once bought a housewarming gift from him. It was Future Foundation version of Mr. Fantastic. But like the Bratz doll version, I guess. Do you like cut his hair? Give him a little Fantastic Four suit? Honestly, he probably does deserve to be paid for that. Overall, GM is gifted with his crafts and great at cosplay, but he can be irritating. I know many people who have stopped answering his phone calls because they know that he can talk to you for hours without pause about anything. Let's just say there's something that you like. Beer and titties, perhaps. Well, he can talk to you so much about beer and titties that you become a teetotaling yaoi fanboy just to avoid talking with him.
I've seen thousands of titties.
I mean, my passions for things run pretty deep. Let's hear what he has to say about YouTube analytics. Who can out-talk the other? It'd be a battle for the ages. This is a true story. One time in a con at 8 a.m., I had just woken up and sat on a table trying to figure out what would reboot my brain. Food, shower, maybe something else. Suddenly out of nowhere, GM arrives, all perky and happy, which was his normal mode. GM, OP, good morning. How are you? OP, grum grum. This is con slang, and it translates to, I can't have higher brain functions at the moment. Do not attempt communications. It's about how I wake up, yeah. Only a nice strong coffee will get the gears turning. GM sat next to me and asked me, have you heard about Sith alchemy? Before I could even answer, he starts talking about Sith alchemy. I sat there wondering if I was really awake when after about 15 minutes of GM talking to me and me pretending to listen and not once saying anything, some random guys walked past us and one of them stopped. Oh good, a diversion. Allow me to slip out the bag. Random guy one. Hey, did you mention Sith alchemy? GM, yes, I was just telling my friend about. Random guy one and GM start talking, and I slip away. Dude, expertly done, OP. I love it. 2 hours later, though, I ran into GM again. But it did buy you some time to refresh and refuel. Let's all say our thanks for the existence of Random Guy 1. GM, hey, OP. I was wondering where you went. OP, hi, yeah. I said I was going to go get breakfast. GM, oh, I missed that part. Did you find any? Don't answer, it's a trap. He's going to go into a great debate about pancakes versus waffles. OP said, yeah, I did. So where are your friends? GM, oh, those guys. I don't know who they were. They left after we talked about Sith alchemy. OP, wait, you didn't even know that, dude? GM, nope. So anyways, what's your plan for the day? He's making plans to tag along right now. Which doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world, except, yeah, he won't stop talking. Just like, dude, I can't hear myself think, okay? OP just says, well, my first game is like in an hour, and then I have to get ready to run my LARP. GM, cool. I'm off to put my cosplay on. See you later. He was second in the cosplay contest that year with his OC. Damn, his OC? I thought these things were like popularity contests, but no, he must have just designed it really well. All right, respect. Man's killer with the handicrafts, like we said. So yeah, he can be annoying, but he doesn't mean it. Also, I have to note that he is not hateful in any way. Also, I don't know and don't really care if he's on some sort of spectrum because that's not my business. I mean, he probably is, but he's just not one of those people that waves it around in everybody's face all the time to get away with murder. So I will say no, it doesn't truly matter. He seems like a functional human being. Semi-functional human being. That's the least that we could ask a lot of times. Anyway, now into the story itself. Oh, that was just like a little prelude. I guess you could have said he's super verbose, believe me, but yeah, a story to demonstrate it. Let's see how it applies. So the story starts after the new year of 2012. We're at Elfin Woman's place to celebrate the combined birthday of Elfin Woman and GM. The exact dates are about a week apart. After some serious dice rolling and eating a Cthulhu cake, Fjord hands GM a gift envelope and asks him to open it. Inside is a booking receipt. She's booked a local venue for him to use as a LARP location. Oh, Fjord's a woman. I didn't presume that. The venue is an old medieval-style roadhouse nearby a medieval stone church, which is perfect for LARPing. Yeah, my paladin's gonna burst through the church doors and then walk into the roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
Honestly, that does sound awful. I'm getting excited just hearing about it. Man, Euro bros have so many advantages. All I ever wanted was an old church to LARP in, and I gotta move to Europe to get it? Lord. So, Fjord explains that GM has talked about his plan for a LARP set in his OC world. It had been a few years since we last ran a game for Outsiders, but the last time it was a huge success. Yeah, huge success, people enjoyed, that's great, but it's a pain in the ass for the people that set it up. Although I know one thing that can motivate you to do it more often, money.
Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money.
Just monetize it. You'll be like, we do this every week. Come on through. But then people probably don't get as excited. Or people get too excited and it devolves into drama and politics. So yeah, just wait a few years, I guess. Everyone present was excited. GM had been telling us about his LARP idea for years, and we all promised to help him with the project. After all, he had been planning for years, and had written, in his own words, 200 pages of backstory for the world. Okay, can you condense that down a bit for the randos that will arrive? Or you just hand them each a 200-page manuscript. Study it well! Yeah, that was the first problem. He had written it in his own words, and while he's not dyslexic, his grammar is awful. When one of us started editing his material, it shortened by about 30 pages, simply by removing unnecessary empty spaces between sentences and by creating actual paragraphs. Is that a grammar thing? I guess it is. It's like punctuation. I bet his syntax is terrible too. It must be awful to have like this grand idea in your head and just be incapable of getting it out into the world. I mean, he does have other gifts, but yeah, focus on those. Don't do this anymore. Imagine if I wrote a story like this. The story would seem long, but it wouldn't really be any longer. And OP did put a line break between each of those sentences for the people that are just listening. So we were set on planning, but first, let me talk about the world itself, because knowing about the world is essential in understanding the story. You're not going to give me 200 pages of backstory, are you? I probably would read it, but I'm going to try and dunk on it the whole time. It's not going to be fun for either of us. Gonna break some hearts. After 2 years of watching ReddX, he's gonna be like, this guy's a dick. Like, yeah, you didn't know? Anyway, as far as I know, he hadn't read Song of Fire and Ice at that point. Trust me, if he was into some piece of nerd culture, he would tell you. Also, Game of Thrones started airing in December of 2012 in our country, so he hadn't seen it at that point. So if Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones is a well-known piece of media, I will draw comparisons between the worlds for easy reference. Only thing I know about is boob dragons, but Google's right there, so do as you will, I'll try and catch up.
If you love Game of Thrones on HBO, you'll love Cinemax's Boob Dragons.
Also, the GM has many original ideas, but he wasn't consistent with them. Like, he has idea A and idea D, but to connect them, he just hand waves it or uses some cliche. I mean, that's what we're all here for, ain't we? Roll some math rocks and make some shit up. It's fine. So the world consisted of one gigantic continent. On the southeast corner was an island nation of not quite feudal Japan, xenophobic and isolated kingdom that had been ravaged by plague, and now the 1,000 remaining islanders lived in isolation. I mean, if a plague wiped out the majority of your population, you'd probably be pretty xenophobic too. Across the ocean on the south end of the continent was not quite pre-Islamic Arabia, vast desert dotted with city nations, lands of mystery and danger, but also culture and science. Majority of the continent was split between the not quite Roman Empire in the west and the not quite Holy Roman Empire Kingdom in the east. North of these countries were the Grey Mountains, and beyond that, frozen lands, populated by barbarians and monsters. I'll be honest, this seems kind of stock standard boilerplate, but it's getting me really excited because it reminds me of Battle Brothers. You ever play Battle Brothers? Turn-based RPG? God, it's like the hardest thing ever. But I love to let it kick my ass every once in a while. He had a wide selection of monsters written into this world. Some, like werewolves, were just carbon copies of the classic creatures. And then there were monsters like his vampires. In his world, vampires were parasitic plants that took over human bodies, forcing them to feed on blood. As time went on and the parasite grew stronger, the human host eventually died, and the plant started to turn into a tree. Elder vampires were sentient trees who lured people to turn them into thralls. Thralls would bring more humans to their master and, over time, earn the right to root themselves near the master. Over time, these vampires would form dark and gloomy death woods. Dude, I really like that idea. An amazing thing you just said. I don't even know if I'd name them vampires. It could just be like a nameless parasitic fungus, but yeah. They're blood-sucking, and they mind control people, and also they're trees? What?
What kind of monster are you?
I really do like that twist. The remote places of the world were populated by ancients. They had their unique name, but yeah, they were the humanoids who ruled over the world 1,000 years before the humans rose up and took over the world. Again, you see this in a lot of different lores. That doesn't make it any less fascinating. Now the ancient cities lie in ruins, and they're forced to live as barbarians, dreaming of old days and glory. How they were described in the background was hilarious, and during the project, and even years after, we joked about the poop monkey game. Yeah, I played that one too. Does a poop monkey log toss or waffle stomp? The Poop Monkey game was to be the second part of this LARP series. In that game, every player would be a member of this race. Everyone would wear a hairy suit, and we would all sit around the campfire talking about astrophysics and philosophical differences between the souls of humans and ancients. If at any point some heretic would bring up the idea of inventing the wheel, he'd be called an idiot, and people would throw poop at him. Not literal poop, right? Usually I wouldn't have to ask myself that question, but after the Funky P-Beard saga, I just don't know anymore. But as a request from me, no actual poop, okay? The GM also laughed at this joke. I think it was because he felt that if we were to make jokes about future games, then we were interested in the world, and we were. We really were. Yeah, dude, it sounds pretty fucking lit if you want me to be honest. There's some people that are turned off by the idea of running through the woods with a foam sword, but that ain't me. It's good cardio, and you get to be a barbarian warrior? Hello? The real dorks are the ones that insist on being mages.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
The kingdom also had paladins. Yes, as it must. Again, they had their own name, and the name was stupid. How stupid was it? Can we call them the Order of the Fedora? That's what I want my order to be named. Imagine Game of Thrones having West Knights. To become a squire, you had to meditate without eating for a year. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Basically, everybody that made it in is a liar. And the ones that weren't willing to lie died of starvation. Then again, maybe if you're pious enough, your chosen god will come down and stay the hand of death. Though I doubt it. No, they were not fasting. They had to remain an entire year without any food. We pointed out to the game master that if you could sit still and not eat for a year, then you're already quite magical. But yeah, They were paladins, good and devoted magical knights who rode along the sides of the kingdom, seeking evildoers and protecting the innocent. Every one of them had a special West sword, a magical blade, and they were all unique and powerful weapons of goodness. So in the name of being basic bitch as possible, he's going to make them evil at some point? In this world, their god was actually evil the whole time. Oh my god, you blown my mind. It's so different than anything I've ever seen before. And OP confirms, yes, this is why every story the GM wrote about these paladins had them either turning evil or being rotten bastards before ever even joining the order. You see, that's how they got through the trial. They lied. Those aren't real paladins. Those paladins that were actually benevolent were easily manipulated in order to do evil. GM explained that he needed his world to have shades of gray, because that's how deconstruction works. After all, that's why the Starks are beloved in Game of Thrones. In a world filled with plotting and backstabbing, they are the most vile and cruel family. It's not really even shades of gray, is it? It's just like, now black is white, everything's reversed. Wasn't that a twist? I mean, yeah, sort of, but not really. GM didn't have a map for his world. At the beginning, we asked for a map, and he told us that he didn't know how to draw one. We pressed him about it, and he insisted that he didn't know how to make a map, despite being good at drawing. I mean, it is sort of an overwhelming task, isn't it? Good thing they have like online generators now. Give me a map. Here it is. Cool. But maybe this was before the days of online generation, so yes, OP got to work. I Googled a while and downloaded a map of the Soviet Union. Then I opened the image in MS Paint, rotated the map sideways, removed everything within the map, and drew borderlines with the brush tool according to what he had written. I had no idea what the size of the counties or duchies or whatever, so I simply divided the empire so that they were all the same size. I added a few larger lakes and mountains. Novaja, Zemija, and other large islands were pushed south and became not Japan. It took me about 5 minutes, and I showed him the map. See? Computers are your friends, okay?
SpongeBob?
Hi, how are you?
Learn to wield it well, and you can do basically anything. OP says this. Could you draw something like this? GM. How did you do this? OP. What? I just slapped this together to show you how easy it is to make a rough map. Now, please draw us a rough map of what your world looks like so we have an easier time planning things. GM says, could we just use this? Do I have your permission to use this map? OP. What? Well, sure. Why not? And that became the base for the official map. I think it's best I don't say anything more about that. I mean, who's really going to connect the dots and realize that this entire map is just Russia on its side? Unsure if GM is really this lazy or just grossly incompetent. Whatever, we'll find out. OP continues, the world was also not a happy place to be if you were a woman. All marriages were arranged, and women pretty much had no rights in the empire, a bit more in the kingdom. A woman was set to be legally under some man her entire life, either father, brother, husband, or if they weren't present, a set servant, major domo, trusted man, etc. Trusted man, does that mean a eunuch? It's the only time you can really trust them, you know? Noble women and members of rich families had rights for divorce and inheritance, but were expected to use their status and money to seek a new husband. Women might hold power de facto, but de jure, all the power was actually in the hands of her caretaker. Are we sure this isn't some power fantasy about what GM wishes for in real life? There was a village, however, somewhere in Kingdom, though GM never explained where, and this was the village of monster hunters. Oh yeah? Owned by Capcom?
Let's go!
For generations, they've trained their members to become monster hunters who leave the village to hunt monsters. No, I don't know if GM has read The Witcher. I mean, even if he had, it's sort of a generic idea, right? In this village, the women had the right to abandon their position as a woman and accept the same position as a man, accepting the same rights and responsibilities as any other man. GM wrote one character from this village, a woman who was a master hunter, and well, a love child of Naruto and Goku probably would be less of a shonen hero than this character was. Yeah, strong independent, she don't need no man. Although rather progressive for the box that I was trying to fit GM into, he's full of surprises, that guy. Although maybe he's just inventing this strong female protagonist so that she can eventually meet his character and fall in love forever. And I'd be like, dude, she gave up her womanhood. The entire village considers her a man. You're totally gay now. Which, you know, is allowed in the village. But you do have to accept and incorporate this new information within yourself, okay? Now for the plot. Damn, we really are getting, like, the full rundown. The game was set in northmost duchy of the empire, divided into 3 counties. Let's call them North Side, Seaside, and South Side. I actually really like that naming convention. It's very descriptive. North Side was a barren area, ridden with barbarians and bandits. Seaside was rich and rather peaceful, and South Side was something in between. Some years ago, a new count was appointed to rule over South Side. North Side and Seaside had been more stable in this regard, while in South Side, they'd replaced the door to Count's mansion with a revolving door. I mean, it seems like the Seaside guy's doing the best, so how about he just runs all 3 of them now? And that's about when they execute me in game for speaking out of line.
First time.
The new count was an old war hero of Imperial cavalry who was given a noble status, a hold to die in, and men to bury him. And this was our first problem in writing. GM wanted him to be more dark and brutal. Well, I thought a more noble and sad character would work better. Basically, my version of what if Barristan Selmy had accepted Joffrey's offer, while his was what if Meryn Trant had been given the offer. Yes, what if indeed? I don't know what we're talking about. Although I will say it's GM's version. Maybe he wants that guy to be the big bad evil guy. We don't really know. Sure, it's your world. Do what you want to do. You already made the map. Now you try to dig in and fix the characters. This is probably exactly what GM wants. Less time DMing, more time painting Bratz dolls, I guess. So, after a few years of ruling the country poorly, a war broke out between North Side and South Side. The war started out small, skirmishes over the border to steal some cattle, but it escalated over time, as these things do. Seaside remained neutral, with its lesser nobles supporting either North Side, South Side, or both. Yeah, supporting both. There ain't nothing wrong with war profiteering. This is how I fill up my bank account. What do you want from me? My kids want to eat caviar every day. I want to have a bar with a shark fish tank inside of it. I can't afford any of that unless both you guys kill each other. The war ended on spring of second year of fighting when the Emperor finally decided that enough was enough and sent Imperial cavalry to stop the fighting. But it was too late. The old Count had died in the last battle. Well, seems like we have a winner then. And that's the setting for the game. The old Count is dead. The Imperial forces have taken over the ruling of the duchy, and people around North and beyond have gathered for the wake and funeral. Sounds good. Let's drink some free booze and remember a life well lived. So this game was set to have about 60 characters from all over the world, with both nobles and commoners, northern barbarians and southern travelers. We planned this game for 6 months. We had 75% of the characters ready. People had already started paying the entry fee. Most of the props, including the corpse of the old Count, were ready. And then, one Friday, the game was still 1 month out, and the next Monday, everything was canceled. Oh, somebody had a hell of a weekend. So what happened? Over time, I became the official second GM. Other people were okay with this. After all, I had written most of the characters, or I had written some part of like 80% of all the characters, to be more precise. I mean, yeah, 80% counts as most, but it seems like GM is just making you his workhorse. Who's collecting these entry fees? Again, I guess we'll see. OP says, GM and I had constant discussions of everything related to the game in our forum, where we did most of the planning. Also, I hosted our bi-weekly writing events, and I created an organized table showing all the characters and their connections to one another, so that everyone could keep track of where we're going and what needs to be done. Over time, the GM and I started to have clashes over things, and there were 3 arguments that in the end killed this game. It could have been something beautiful, but you've soiled it! Soiled it! That's what happens when everybody tries to wrench control of the steering wheel, you know? The first argument was known as New Nord. I thought that this world was too dark, and I designed a secret organization. Well, obviously the secret's out. This group started as a few nobles who wanted to protect their peasants. If your peasants aren't eaten by wolves or murdered by bandits, then they can pay their taxes on time. And that is great for the bank balance. Over time, it expanded into a shadow organization of people who fought corruption and crime. They weren't heroes. Most of them just didn't want people dying in vain and wanted the common people to live a peaceful life, or had the selfish desire to live in a better world and other people's happiness was just a byproduct. And this was too much for GM. Too many goody two-shoes will ruin the game. We need to add some darker shades to make this group interesting. Okay, but could we not? This was put in place to lighten up some of the darker shades. You're already wearing sunglasses inside a nightclub built inside of labyrinthine cave corridors. I don't really know how much darker we could make it. Just let me have this little pinprick of light. The GM also attacked the name that I had chosen. I tried to explain that the group wanted to see their home area becoming something new and better, if not for themselves, then for their children. He said that the name sounded like a neo-national socialist group and insisted using the name Swidden, as in slash and burn farming, to reflect how they burn away the old world and give a chance for a new one to grow. I think both of those names are dumb. If it's not going to be Order of the Fedora, then it has to be Tendi Loving Titans. OP says, I tried to explain to GM that that's basically the opposite of what this group tries to do. And then I brought in character Vladimir and changed the story of Rose, who I guess we'll learn about shortly. Vladimir was the son of the Count of Northside. The Count was known to be a manipulative crook and untrustworthy, and Vladimir was even worse. Imagine if you take Ramsay Bolton and remove all the mind games and sick sense of humor. GM wrote in his backstory a part where he was summoned to judge a thief. The thief was a small child. His mother was a widow and parent to 6 small children. The thief had stolen bread to feed his siblings. So Vladimir had him and a random sibling crucified as mercy, since now the mother had less children to feed. Jesus, it's like the most brutal thing ever. You are going to have an uprising on your hand like yesterday. You might think of medieval peasants as just dumb as hell, you know? But they do understand the ramification of the king's actions here. He is sure to be usurped in relatively short order. I pointed out to GM that for the goals of New Nord, they would fill Vladimir with rocks and dump him into the nearest swamp. But GM insisted that Vladimir had the qualities and skills that the group would desire. He wrote some backstory for the group and Vladimir, but never finished it. What are the qualities or skills? A treasury full of gold? Well, if we just kill him, then we can take the gold.
I found the treasure!
We don't actually need him. There was also Rose, and Rose was a servant of a noble couple involved in New Nord, the current leader couple, in fact. Rose didn't know much about New Nord. She was just a servant girl in a noble mansion. The nobles had sent Rose as a spy to keep tabs on the old count. New Nord knew the old count was not fit for their ranks, but still needed to keep an eye on him. Rose was set in a difficult position. She was alone in a strange place without a solid support net. So she did what she could to be more close with the Count in order to gather information. And this is where, again, we clashed. GM wants Rose to bang the Count. You know, in real life, he might be a decent person, but in his head, like you really see all the degeneracy come out. Although maybe I'm being presumptuous. Let's find out. In my version, Rose meets with the Count and finds him a sad old man who's devoted his entire life to serving the Empire and was now just cast aside to die alone in a distant part of the land. Rose and the old Count found comfort in each other, both being alone in life. Over the years, they became friends, and even more. Oh no, it's OP that wanted to make a bang? Nasty.
You're just ruining it. Look at my lips, you're ruining it.
After the Count died, no one cried more genuine tears than Rose. Especially since she found out that she is now carrying the Count's child. Now that the Count is dead, she's facing a dilemma of what to do. She is carrying a child without a father. No one would believe her if she tried to declare the child as the rightful heir to the Count, or maybe her true masters would, but then what? Would her child simply become a tool in the nobles' fight over the title of Count? Or maybe she could leave all this behind, choose the burden of raising a bastard child of a man she loved, or maybe she could join a group of traveling minstrels and start finally living her own life. Game Master didn't like this. In her version, the old Count was a lecherous drunkard, and Rose was pretty much forced to use her body in order to gather any information from the Count for her masters. Oh, I thought OP's was nasty, but yeah, that's even worse. The Count's just like, yeah, I'll tell you all of our military secrets. I just need a bus first. And then, like, post-nut clarity's not doing him any favors. You should be like, wait, what the hell am I doing? In GM's version, now with the Count dead, Rose alone knew about the child, and if she told her masters, then she would be forced to nurse the child of the one who maltreated her. This is my bias, but I feel like my version was more complex and open for plot opportunities. I know some people like to have a very dark and or complex plot for their characters, so this is just my opinion. I mean, given the choice between the two, yeah, I'm definitely leaning OP's way. There's no subtlety at all to the stuff the GM writes. And all of this mixes in even more with the second argument, the mage character, Magda. This world had magic. Boo. I'm looking for a low to no magic roleplay, thank you. Game Master had written a pretty generic magic system where magic was a gift from the gods. Some individuals were born with the talent of connection with the fountain, where their souls would drink and grant them mysterious powers. I wanted the game to have a mage character. It is a fantasy game after all, and I wrote one of my favorite characters. It's not the best character I've ever written or the most complex, but it is one that I had the most fun writing. It's not malicious Magda, right? You remember that entitled parent saga that we did? She gets a new life as a mage, and also she's racist towards Mexican people. Magda was the daughter of a merchant from Northside who at a young age discovered that she had the power to alter minds of other people. Her family is afraid of this power and sends her south to train in the Mages Guild. She's accepted into the guild and trains as a telemancer, which is a mage with the power of telepathy. Over the years that she trains in the guild, she makes friends and learns more about the world and even makes connections with other characters that would be in the LARP. She returns home and is accepted back to her family. Now, as a grown woman and guild artisan, she has a set place in the world. Through arranged marriage, she has a family of her own, but as a mage, she's never truly trusted and has to fight for every last scrap of respect. I mean, yeah, you'd probably be wary of somebody that can play with your thoughts and perceptions. It's probably not somebody I'd want to hang around. In the aftermath of the war, Magda accidentally discovers the true identity of the person responsible for the war. But this person is a noble, so she can't just openly accuse him, especially since she found out by reading his mind, by accident, and without permission. Oopsie. Revealing the truth would bring harm to the noble, who was an ally of her family and a loyal servant of the Count of Northside. So she is torn between duty and morale. I like this setup, and I gave her a small spell list. 4 one-shot spells. Silence, target can't speak for 5 minutes. 2 truth spells, the next thing the target says must be true. And mind scan, target must reveal something about a something that the mage asks, but only the mage can hear the answer. Yeah, I mean, all this seems pretty shit for combat, but as far as role-playing goes, the possibilities are endless. I posted the character on the forums in 4 parts because this was, and still is, the longest character that I have ever written. Not the best, not the most complex, but the longest, probably because OP was having fun with it, so I think that's good. So GM reads all of it since he commented all the way, so I kept writing. And when I was all done, he dropped this bomb. Oh, you need to rewrite this. You can't have those spells in my game. OP, what's wrong with them, GM? Spells like that ruin games. I've been in too many games where those things are used to reveal secrets at the wrong times. Like with Rose. I mean, sometimes stuff like that happens, and you just gotta roll with the punches. It's part of being GM. Do you not realize? OP says, you make it sound like 5 minutes into the game, some noble will drag Rose to Magda and force her to ask, are you pregnant with the child of the old count? That would require an insane amount of metagaming. And even then, no one can force Magda to do that. She's a guild artisan, not a slave. Of course, the metagamer is scared of the metagaming. GM, didn't you read page 127? No, I had not read page 127 of his backstory. The magic was described in pages 80 to 82, so I didn't look at page 127. Page 127 was the part talking about the social culture of the Empire. And OP says, yes, I admit I should have read this better when reading about his world. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of a lot to absorb. I don't think I can remember 120 plus pages of content. I run through it once and then I'm like, I don't know, refer to it on YouTube for my thoughts. But on page 127, mages are not trusted in the Empire, and yeah, I knew this already. It was said in pages 80 to 82, but on 127, I found out that when mages discover their powers, they, and sometimes their family, are sent to re-education camps, where they're kept for the rest of their lives. Wow, education's really never over. This is the school of hard knocks. The 10% who get out of the camps are given guardians to follow them around and kill them the moment that the mage starts to become dangerous. The released mage is forced to serve the Empire for the rest of their lives. I don't think that's going to work out. Can't you just turn around and fireball the dude that's watching you in the face?
Cast fireball.
Dude.
Cast fireball.
I guess he does.
Fireball solves every situation.
I think a lot more than 10% of mage slaves would escape. This would have been nice to know. I have no problem writing a dark character or rewriting this character as someone from the kingdom or north beyond the Grey Mountains. Heck, let's go wild and make her a wandering mage from not Japan. But after I had written 12 pages, he tells me to rewrite 90% of the text because he couldn't be bothered to comment on that part earlier. Well, that just seems like a power play or something like that. There's really no reason for it. You knew it was wrong. You were reading it the whole way. You just hoped that I'd bring it back around. OP says, I could not believe that he would pull a move like that. No one's got a dick that big.
Not even Long Dick Johnson, and he had a fucking long dick.
Indeed, thus the name. But a lot of people do want to be Long Dick Johnson. Not many people want to be Gigantic Douche DM. But before we could even talk that second point over, the last problem hit the table. The vampire plot. So, the vampire plot. Well, the GM decided one day that he wanted to have vampires present in his game because he was proud of the vampires he had created, and well, he was right. His idea for vampires was cool. Yes, I've admitted to that as well. During our writing meetings, we came up with the idea that the old Count had been bitten by a vampire before the war, and what people thought of him suffering from drunken delirium or battle lust in war was actually the vampire side taking over. He died before turning into a pure vampire and thus was never found out. All right, simple, safe, to the point, said the captain of the Titanic. At least most of those people are being paid to work on the Titanic. OP's subjecting himself to this for free because he wants to run a good tabletop game. I gotta tell you right now, some prices just ain't worth it. Anyway, enter Madame Lucia. Lucia was the last member of the Lafourgue family. As the youngest daughter of a small, noble family from Southside, she was destined to a mediocre and simple life. But then, her family died over the years, and soon she realized that she was the only remaining member of her family. No one had arranged her a marriage or taught her anything about ruling. Her legal guardian was her male cousin, who had married into another family, leaving Lucia last to bear her family name. That's rough, dude. Now the family tree can be chopped down and safely used for firewood. Lucia decided to take initiative into her own hands. She started to be more active in local politics and tried to gather allies for herself. During the war, she sent as much assistance to the old Count's army as possible, and now with Southside in political turmoil, she sought to carve herself a place in this world. To make herself stand out, she even hired a group of traveling monster hunters from the kingdom as bodyguards. Thus, we had a reason for those hunters to be in the game. Really, she was a simple character, with some noble politics and some romance. Great for somebody who's new to LARPing and wants a character with simpler motivations. Or so I thought, and I sent the character to our forum. Oh, what a sweet summer child I was. Honestly, it's such a bare bones outline, I don't see what problem GM could possibly have, but he'll find it. God knows he'll find it. GM decided that Lucia was perfect for the vampire plot. Oh, thank God. The plot was set up like this. Some weeks before the game, Lucia was bitten by a vampire. She doesn't know what's happened, and most of the time she's in control, but occasionally the vampire takes over and causes her to shriek and shout or attack others. The GM had set one of his old player friends to play as Lucia, and had scripted her to have a scene like this early on in our game. Enough to draw attention, but not enough for the monster hunters to recognize her as a vampire and attack her. At least not yet. What happened? Third time's the charm? How many times we gotta wait before accusing somebody of being a vampire? We can accuse people of being witches over nothing. It seems like the same rules should apply. Later in the game, groups of ancients would appear outside, making noise and trying to steal food, clothes, etc., perhaps wheels. This would draw the attraction of everyone inside the wake hall. After all, the men must protect the women from monsters. Yeah, that's part of the arrangement. Enter the Thief. Thief is part of a traveling band of jesters who had been hired by the client to steal the burial mask of the old Count. Dude, that's kind of fucked up right there. With the distraction, the thief's perfect opportunity to sneak to the corpse of the old Count and steal the mask arrives. But when the thief removes the mask, he sees old Count's face twisted into a vampiric grin. And in horror, he falls onto the ground, alerting the other characters to come and witness the same. Also, when the thief falls, he would drop the mask. The mask then breaks and reveals the secret message hidden inside. Ooh, intriguing! At this point, the hunters would have to step over and set up the corpse to be destroyed. At the same time, Lucia would realize what happened to her and be forced to seek out help. But can she be saved, or will she be destroyed by her bodyguard? I mean, it's sort of intriguing, but yeah. Why do you want to just redo the thing that I did? GM wants OP to do like 90% of the legwork, and then he steps in and cobbles together the last 10%. He's like, I made that. All of this is stuff that I made. Well, first of all, it doesn't exist, and second of all, no, it fucking isn't. Remember, all this is from the guy who thought that the truth spell would ruin the game. I pointed out that if he insisted on having this plot in-game, why use Lucia? We had, at that point, 6 characters that we hadn't even begun to write, and 3 noble women with no plot in the game. Why take one who was basically ready and alter her entire character? But no, I was just upset and didn't understand the purpose of this plot. Really, the main problem that he had was that you created it. I don't think he really understands the purpose of the plot either. He just knows that if you made it, he still has to like put his fingerprints on it so he can say that he made it, you know? So these 3 things led to me and GM having heated arguments in the forums and over the phone. Yeah, it's getting serious. Arguments spread over several days, which halted everything. I called him over-controlling and not focusing on what needed to be done before rolling in new plots. He called me a jerk who was never happy with character ideas that other people created. Take a look in the mirror, dude. What? So much projection, I've gone blind. I asked, pleaded Elfin Woman and Fjord to moderate us, to look over the characters, to do something, but in the end, it was too little, too late. Damn, now all these people that paid their entry fees don't get to come and have a good time because 2 people couldn't settle their differences. That's ludicrous. On Friday, GM posted a message explaining how he no longer felt like running this game, and he left the project. I wrote my own message following his, where I said basically the same. At this point, Elfin Woman and Fjord noticed how bad the situation was and tried to talk sense into us, but it was too late. Our friendship was only saved with the agreement that we would never game master a game together. I also promised to never GM a game set in his world because, yeah, it was just too dark for me. Come on, guys, don't you want to play Edge Max Death Grind? No, I don't. I'd prefer my playtime to be a bit more silly and fun, thank you. So, where are we now? As far as I know, he never ran a game in his world and hasn't spoken to me about running one. I adopted, with GM's permission, 2 of the hunters, the one he wrote and her apprentice that I wrote, and I brought them into a LARP series that I DM, where they hopped from their own world into mine. The end. Well, not the fireworks that I was hoping for. A lot of backstory. Pretty interesting world, all things considered. But yeah, it's just a shame that these 2 people couldn't put their egos aside in the name of fun, in the name of running a game that people might enjoy. Instead, it becomes this pissing contest and everybody has to compare dicks and who wrote more characters than the other person. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. I guess I'd expect nothing else from Neckbeards. I hope you enjoyed the story in some form or fashion, friend. A bit more different than what we usually get, but I ain't complaining too much. Pretty decent writing style. Lord DeSantos has many other stories that we could delve into, so let me know if you'd like me to take a look at them. Join up on the Patreon or the YouTube memberships if you can, because get a little bit of extra cash flow. It all gets invested back into the channel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to the people who have signed up thus far. Always remember, friends, that you are loved, you are worthy, you definitely deserve it, and I shall see you in the next one. So until then, bye-bye. Go ahead and cut them open. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Promise. Where's